Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Main topic of this video may not be in your top 10 things to care about in this election cycle, but I think it is notable because this party does have a decent amount of support. It is the 5th largest party in the US, and, well, I think they should be talked about and discussed. And if you're a member of said party, hey, how you doing? Paleoconservatives come to this channel a lot, thanks to my video on paleoconservatism. It's my most popular video, I think. I would rather it be the Socialist Party video, but I'm not going to split hairs. With all that out of the way, let's get right into the news. And first news is really disappointing. Disappointing, but not surprising. House passes compromise defense bill creating a space force. I will sign this historic defense legislation immediately, President Donald Trump tweeted. Of course he did. Pushing through partisan politics, the House on Wednesday overwhelmingly passed a $738 billion compromise defense policy bill that would create a space force as its newest military service. In a 377 to 48 vote, lawmakers approved of the fiscal 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, which both House Democrats and President Trump taking credit for its marquee provisions, which also include parental leave for federal workers and repeal for military widows tax. Okay, so yes, as it just stated, it did do some good things, but the thing is, this is a compromise bill. The Democrats wanted to do a whole lot more, such as get that $738 billion or trillion? Just said it. Billion. Okay. They wanted to get that number down, like progressives really wanted to get that number down, and they wanted to do quite a few more things to give, do quite a few more things for the military members. Like, the soldiers that are being sent to these interventionist wars, give them more benefits and such. But, can't do it all. I mean, Democrats are the ones that gotta capitulate. But the biggest thing that it says right there it did is it created the Space Force. Yes, it created the Space Force. The very valuable service we needed to create the Space Force. 44,789 people die each year because they don't have health insurance. But Space Force, we really needed to do the Space Force. We really needed to do the Space Force. It was so important. The Earth is literally about to be destroyed by our climate change in 9 years. But the Space Force was so important. And, let me be clear, I'm going to be very clear, I'm going to give all 48 of the dissenters, because it was bipartisan in both its dissent and its support, well, not even bipartisan, in fact, it actually wasn't bipartisan in its dissent, it was tripartisan. I'm going to give all 48 of them their due payment, their good luck, their hurrah, by listing them all right here. Yeah, I'm just gonna list them. The nay votes were Justin Amash, Karen Bass, Earl Blumenauer, Ken Buck, Judy Chu, Yvette Clark, Steve Cohen, Danny K. Davis, Peter DeFazio, Deanna DeJet, Mark Dislauner, Debbie Dingle, Michael F. Doyle, Elliot Engel, Adriano Espiliat, Tulsi Gabbard, Chuy Garcia, Louis Gomert, Jimmy Gomez, Morgan Griffith, Raul Grijalva, Jared Huffman, Pramila Jayapal, Joe Kennedy III, Ro Khanna, Dan Kidley, Barbara Lee, Andy Levin, Alan Lowenthal, Thomas Massey, Tom McClintock, James McGovern, Grace Meng, Jerry Nadler, Grace Napolinto, Joe Neguse, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Mark Pocan, Ayanna Pressley, Jamie Raskin, Tom Rice, Jan Sachowski, Rashida Tlaib, Paul Tonko, Nydia Velasquez, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, and Peter Welch. And I'm going to assume that if Eleanor Holmes Norton had the ability to vote, she would have voted nay also. But I mean, she doesn't have the ability to vote, so it doesn't matter. So anyways, this is obviously a bad thing. We're giving more and more money to the military-industrial complex when we don't have an enemy to fight. Like, yeah, we kind of forgot to have the enemy part. Like, we're getting so desperate for an enemy, we're literally looking to space to find one. Like, hello, are there any aliens out there? Darth Vader, are you out there? Hello? Like, seriously, we're so desperate. The military is just aching for a fight so bad. Like, it's like, well, I mean, except for the ones that we have in wheelchairs here, we need not forget, we have people in the streets that fought in, like, Iraq and Afghanistan. They're in the streets with no legs that need to beg for money. Like, do you not understand? We need to take care of the veterans we have now rather than create more. Like, this is insane. Like, it perplexes me. Just why? Well, I mean, I know why. Military-industrial complex, they got that money, and the politicians, they want money, so naturally, they'll do that. And speaking of the military-industrial complex money in Afghanistan, we just got a bombshell, a huge bombshell, and surprisingly, nobody's talking about it. Oh wait, scratch that. Not surprisingly. Of course it's not surprising. We just got something called the Afghanistan Papers, released by the Washington Post. You still have to pay money to see the Afghanistan Papers, but they did still release the Afghanistan Papers. Basically, the Afghanistan Papers revealed, unsurprisingly, that the United States was lying to everyone. They were lying about their details and why they went into the Afghanistan war. They lied about their successes. They had their records that show veterans were there, and they're like, what's our goal? Where's our enemy? And no enemy was there because there was nothing. Like, it shows it. It's pretty much the guy who released the Pentagon Papers said this is pretty much the Pentagon Papers, but for Afghanistan. Think about the Afghanistan war. We have been in there for 18 years. Legally, I can go out and fuck the Afghanistan war. Think about that. Legally, everyone can fuck the Afghanistan war. Because it is legal consenting age. Afghanistan war can go out and buy a pack of cigarettes. We don't need wars to last that long. Especially when we don't have a goal. We do not have a single goal in Afghanistan. Like, and you might say, well, it's cool. We exposed the Bush administration. This is not just to expose the Bush administration. It exposed Bush. It exposed Obama. It exposed both of them. It exposes all of the presidencies that happened during the Afghanistan war. And yes, expose everybody. This is insane. This is insane. Why is this a thing? I mean, okay, I say these questions even though I know the answer. Military-industrial complex, money. The military-industrial complex owns the politicians. So, of course, what they say, the politicians are going to get. Like, the politicians will tell the people, we need to stay in this war. And the fact is, like, this is just a very simple question. Everybody points this out. What is the goal? There is no goal. Like, what is the defeat? How do we win the Afghanistan war? Like, you can't debate people on this because there is no answer. If I went to somebody who said, oh, I'm in favor of the Afghanistan war, which nobody says. Like, literally nobody says they're in favor of the Afghanistan war. Like, in the Iraq war, they had something there. They had something there, like saying, oh, we need to take down Saddam Hussein because he had weapons of mass destruction. But the Afghanistan war, we don't really have that. We had Bin Laden. Bin Laden is dead. If anything, that's when the wars should have ended. If we lived in a reasonable world, that is when it would have ended. But we don't. We live in a world where the military industrial complex controls our politicians. And that's why we need to fix our campaign finance. Like, okay, that's one way we could fix it, but there's just, it's so ingrained in our politics that might be just pretty much impossible. I mean, yeah, but you could elect people that could fix this. But then again, military industrial complex will easily just throw money to someone who will do whatever they say. And the thing is, of course, I'm gonna get if a mainstream Democrat finds this channel, I'm gonna get bombarded with like a million comments saying Russian asset, haha, lol. Because if we don't expand into Afghanistan and do all these Middle Eastern wars, Putin wins somehow. As Bernie Sanders once said, the Soviet Union doesn't exist. Who is our biggest threat? Where's our biggest threat? Afghanistan is not our biggest threat. Iraq is not our biggest threat. Iran? No, they're not our biggest threat. They're not attacking us. North Korea? They're our threat. Ooh, the people that keep saying, oh, we're going to bomb you, U.S. We're going to give you a Christmas present. And they don't do anything. Yeah, they're a big threat, guys. There's a reason why when countries were polled, who's the biggest threat to world peace, the U.S. was the number one answer. Because the U.S. is the biggest threat to world peace. Because, unlike other countries, they understand that military is a last resort. The U.S., we're so ingrained with this patriotic, like, we need to help fight, we need the troops to blah, blah, blah. We're so ingrained with that mentality that we think war is the only answer. We think it's the only answer. And for some reason, non-interventionism is still not seen. Like, it is incredibly popular. Non-interventionism is incredibly popular among the people and among populist politicians. They all agree non-interventionism is good. But for some reason, non-interventionism gets a bad name because sometimes people like to do it in a bad way. Like Trump. Trump announces on Twitter, we'll be pulling out of this war. And then everyone's like, oh, Trump is doing foreign policy on Twitter. We can't do that. And then they always skip the part where Trump doesn't do that. Trump doesn't actually pull the troops out. He keeps them in, and sometimes he keeps them in and sends more. Like, Trump also announced, like, I'm going to be pulling out some troops, like 40,000 troops from Afghanistan today. No, he's not. He's not going to pull out the troops. If he does, I'll give him credit, but he's clearly not. Like, I mean, we need to end these wars, bring the troops home, and care for them. These people, like, I'll just say it. All the people who were killed in Iraq, they died for nothing. They have died for nothing. If you know someone who died in Iraq, they died for nothing. They died in vain. I mean, not even in vain. I mean, maybe in vain. I don't know the full definition of, like, dying in vain. But, I mean, the implication of saying they died in vain would mean that their death had some kind of purpose. Like, they were going to originally die for some kind of purpose, but the purpose was unfulfilled. They didn't have a purpose going in. they treat your relatives, your friends, your brothers, your neighbor down the street. They treat human beings as pawns in a chess game. And that is absurd. A human life is a human life. And then I'm going to get some conservative in the comments saying, bullshit. Fuck you. The grown-ups are trying to have a conversation here. And isn't it weird that for some reason, a 19-year-old community college student who runs a YouTube channel in his bedroom is able to grasp this concept before, like, big-name journalists that make millions of dollars? Like, isn't that weird? Is it just me? No, it's obviously not just me. So anyways, another foreign policy story. Not even foreign policy, it's just something foreign. Israel is going to be doing a third election. So yeah, turns out Benny Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu failed to form a government again. And they're going to be poised to have a third election. Now, what is the goal? Like, what's going to happen? Well, I mean, I don't necessarily know 100%. This one may be interesting, though, because there might not be a Netanyahu going into this election, because remember, Netanyahu was, indicted on some corruption charges. Now, he might be going to jail. So, there might actually be a chance someone forms a government this time, because the thing is, Gantz was apparently, so against the idea of, forming a government with Netanyahu that was never an option. Even though that would have been the easiest way to form a government. He said it was because he was ideologically opposed to Netanyahu or whatever. But he didn't end up forming a government with him. Now that Netanyahu's gone, the Likud might be pushing a more moderate member to their front, and then Gantz might be more okay with forming a government with them. What kind of surprises me is that Netanyahu didn't form a coalition with the smaller religious right-wing parties. I don't know. I guess maybe that they were, he wasn't pushing hard enough on Israel, going into Palestinian territories. And I do commend that Joint List was able to not be tempted too much by Gantz. They're like, Gantz is better, but, we're not going to be giving Gantz the power, because Gantz isn't going to be doing so hot. I hope that for somehow that something like Joint List somehow manages to overtake them, or Joint List is able to form a coalition with the other left-wing parties that are able to give enough to combat, the other guys. Because, Free Palestine and that, Joint List is probably the best bet for that. So anyways, speaking of elections, not that long ago, we just got the UK elections. Now, for those of you who don't know what happened, let me explain. The UK had elections, unsurprisingly. So, the thing is, these elections were highly looked after, this might actually be interesting, because it was suspected, maybe, Jeremy Corbyn pulls off a win, and then, we can actually have him, take forward make democratic socialism more appealing. Let me explain what happened. Overall, the results were this. The Tories had 365 seats. Labour has 202. Liberal Democrats has 11. The Scottish National Party has 48. Democratic Unionist Party, 8. Sinfien 7 played Kimru 4. The SDLP, Social Democratic and Labour Party in, Northern Ireland 2. The Alliance Party 1. The Green Party 1. So as you can see, Labour didn't win. SNP did well, and I guess Conservatives did well. Yeah, I think they did a whole lot better. Yeah, I think they kind of wiped the floor with Corbyn in a sense. They kind of did. I think so. I mean, last time around, the Tory party had to form a coalition with Democratic Unionist Party in order to keep their government, but this time they don't have to worry about that anymore. But they got only two more seats to be the majority, so I think they did all right. I mean, they did good. I mean, obviously they're in the majority, so they did good. Labour did not so well as expected. Many people were either expecting Labour to win or at least pull a close race. But here's the thing. Many people are trying to figure out, why did Labour lose? Why did it lose? Well, the corporate Democrats, they have a theory. It's a bullshit theory, but they have a theory nonetheless. Their theory was that Corbyn was just too far left. And they were able to, due to the fact that he was so far left, there was just no way he could get anything done. That's why he lost. Because he was too far left. No. It's not true. That's complete bullshit. Let me give you the real reason why Corbyn lost. And, believe it or not, some people like to overplay certain factors, but here's the thing. Half of it is Corbyn's fault, and half of it is not his fault. Let me go over the not his fault. The smears. He was being accused of being an anti-Semite and being a Russian asset the weeks up to his election. Up to the weeks of his election, he was being accused of being an anti-Semite and being, a Russian asset by people like Neera Tanden, people like that. Like the corporate establishment Democrats. The likes of them. They weren't, they were just pushing, he's an anti-Semite. No, actually, Neera Tanden, she tried to be a little so-so. She tried to be, coy and cool, I guess. In a sense, I guess. I don't know what her personality was trying to be in those tweets, but she was, trying to say, first of all, when people like Jacobin and Aaron Mattei were talking about Labour, she was adding them and be like, well, you guys were in favor of voting third party in the 2016 election. Why aren't you in favor of voting third party this time around? And it's well, Neera, believe it or not, Jill Stein and Jeremy Corbyn have a lot more agreement than Hillary Clinton and Corbyn. Believe it or not, there's this thing called a political ideology, and people adhere to it, and Corbyn's ideology aligns with Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein and not with Hillary Clinton. She'd be more in favor of someone like Joe Swinson. Speaking of Joe Swinson, the Liberal Democrat leader, she lost in her constituency because she was a boring nobody. But anyways, Neera Tanden was going on, on the record saying, the weeks before the election, she was, trying to use the anti-Semitism and Russian asset smear, but she was always being, iffy on it, she was trying to say, well, I don't believe Corbyn's an anti-Semite, but I believe that this issue should be raised. And then after he lost, she's like, I wonder why he lost. Jeremy Corbyn did say that he borrowed his platform from Bernie Sanders. It's wait, what? Wait, Corbyn was elected to be an MP in 1983? So you're telling me he just was I'm going to copy the platform of one mayoral candidate. I'm going to pick this one. That's what he did? No, that's just ignoring Corbyn's huge platform of public service. That's just throwing all that out the window just to try and smear Bernie. And also, funnily enough, for some reason, people are trying to use the anti-Semitism smear against Bernie after they found out that it worked with Corbyn. And surprisingly, people are calling out the BS literally just like, because, believe it or not, a guy who had his uncle and grandparents killed in the Holocaust, I don't think that guy's an anti-Semite. I don't think that guy's an anti-Semite by any stretch of the word. But anyways, back to Corbyn. They were using these smears to try and diminish him, and we're also trying to use, to an extent, like, paint Corbyn as if he were an elitist. Which somehow worked because Boris Johnson, he's a Trump. Like, he's like, I am a Trump kind of guy. Like, he talks like a normal person, whereas Corbyn, it talks more like a politician. So they're able to somehow paint him as an elitist, anti-Semite Russian asset. But here's the second thing that caused Corbyn to lose. And believe it or not, this one is actually Corbyn's fault. And I think Corbyn is right in somewhat admitting, yeah, this is kind of my fault. Brexit. For some reason, the Americans are not looking towards Brexit, even though Brexit is literally the most important issue in the United Kingdom right now. Believe it or not, for some reason, I mean, of course I know why they're not paying attention to it, because if they paid attention to Brexit at all, they'd have to acknowledge a lot of things, but that's for later. Brexit is the most important issue raised in the United Kingdom at the moment. And you needed to have a clear stance on Brexit. Like a clear, forefront, just 100% readily available stance on Brexit. Boris Johnson's was very simple. Advocate for leaving the EU. He was for Brexit. The Liberal Democrats, the Green Party, the Independent Group for Change, all these groups, they were like, we advocate for remaining in the European Union. Like, I mean, even though the Independent Group for Change just got the floor wiped with them, and smaller party groups like UKIP and the Brexit Party didn't really elect anybody in this election, even though they were projected to do something interesting in this election. Like, all these groups have one thing in common. They had a clear, 100% readily available, clear-cut position on Brexit. Labour. What about Labour? Well, here's the thing. In the original referendum, the Labour Party advocated for remaining in the European Union. Then, after Brexit was enacted, Labour didn't really have a clear-cut Brexit position. They were still sort of advocating for remaining in the European Union, and every time they introduced a version of a Brexit deal, it would kind of either be a soft Brexit deal where they would be like, we're still in the European Union, but we just kind of pull back a little bit, to when they say, okay, we will leave the EU, but we will have a customs union with the EU, so we will have permanent trade relations with the EU. Okay, so that was their Brexit position going into, like, that was their Brexit position from when Brexit was voted on to, like, early this year when they had the EU elections. It was kind of just like, that was our Brexit position now. We will leave the EU, but we will have a Brexit position. Like, we will have a customs union. That was their Brexit position. So it had shifted 2 times. One from Remain, then soft Brexit, then a Brexit with a customs union. Okay. Then, there was also the idea of, like, holding a December general election, and Labour was against holding a December general election. But then they changed their mind, and they were for a December general election. And then, with this new, like, one, they changed their Brexit position again to be for remaining again. Like, they would advocate for a second referendum, and during that second referendum, they will advocate for remaining in the EU. Now, to an extent, I get the idea of having a second referendum, But many people look at it as if it is elitist. They will look at it and be like, hey, like George Galloway, who is a left-wing Brexiteer, points this out very clearly, saying like, hey, it's literally just the politicians pointing the finger at you and saying, no, you voted wrong, let's get it right. Vote the correct way this time. Like, that is what it came off as, and to an extent it did seem kind of elitist. And that is a bigger reason why Corbyn lost. Corbyn clearly did not care about Brexit a lot. That was clearly not his top priority. His priority was combating the Tories' austerity programs and combating the Tory and their agenda. They're trying to cut the NHS. Trying to combat them in those regards. But Brexit was the number one issue. So they should have had a clear-cut Brexit position in the election. But unfortunately, they did not. I feel that if Corbyn was very clear-cut in a Brexit position, he would have been able to overcome the smears, overcome all the tactics that were trying to push him away, and he could have actually gotten something done. Like, I think, at the very least, he should have stayed clear-cut on the customs union, because the Tory party, they did change their Brexit position too. The Tory party, they were advocating for all their members to vote however they wanted, because both of the two major parties, like the two major parties in Britain, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, both acknowledge that they have people who were in their parties that voted for Leave, and they have people in their parties that voted for Remain. But where the Conservative Party succeeded, where the Labour Party failed, the Conservative Party, once the decision was done, they were able to clear-cut the party's position, but still allow the members of the party to have their own position. Like, for example, when it was 100% clear that leaving the EU was the voted-on position, the Remain leader left the leadership position because he advocated for Remain, and then Theresa May, who also advocated for Remain, was put in the front of the pedestal, but she still advocated for leaving the EU. Because even though that wasn't her personal position, it was the party's position now. Then, many people point out the fact like she was terrible at the Brexit deal because she was a Remainer. So then, she said, yeah, I'm just gonna dip, and you can pick someone who is for Brexit to be the leader now, and that's where Boris Johnson swooped in and became leader. Okay? That's why the Labour Party lost. And why George Galloway is forming a new political party in Britain that is going to be a left-wing Brexit party. Like, I don't know how this party's going to go, but let's see where this goes. Let's see if this leads to something interesting. Oh yeah, and Corbyn's leaving the leadership position of the Labour Party. Stinks, but I mean, Corbyn, it was kind of eventual. So yeah, anyways, here's another thing. The debates. The next debate is supposed to be on the 19th, but there may be something changing to prevent that from happening. Okay, so here are some developments. Like, after Kamala dropped out, no person of color qualified for the debate. Then, one person of color did qualify for the debate. Can you guess who? Andrew Yang. Because Andrew Yang is rising steadily, rising good. Tulsi Gabbard then also announced that she would be skipping the next debate over, like she wanted to talk to voters rather than stand on a debate stage for like 30 minutes. Then, something interesting happened. After Tulsi said she skipped, a lot of other top Democrats, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, like pretty much all of the Democrats that were going to be on the stage, stated that they will be skipping the debate in order to stand with picket liners, like protesters that were going to be protesting something for work conditions. Then it turns out that there's also a letter going around signed by all the people who were on the debate stage and Cory Booker and Julian Castro, and they stated that they will be also boycotting the debate in a sense to reinstate the old debate rules where you no longer have to meet both qualifications, but you have to meet only one qualification, which would mean that someone like Booker, Castro, and Gabbard would make it on the debate stage as well. Now, we'll just see how this goes, because I don't really know where this is going to go at the moment. Story's still developing. So anyways, now on to the smaller candidate of the day, and it's one that I was 100% expecting. Now, you may know that I've been paying attention to the Green Party primary, and been talking about some of the good things and the not so good things. So, one good thing that just happened is I was proven right. Because one thing I kept saying is that one candidate that has been running in every single Green Party primary since like 2004, that guy is going to be running. And he just announced today, he is running. Kent Messplay is making another run for the Green Party primary. Now, if you don't know anything about Kent Messplay, well, go check out my Green Party video. He gets mentioned in it. Basically, Kent Messplay is a perennial Green Party candidate. He's run for every single Green Party nomination since the party's founding. And it'll be really interesting to see him try again. Especially considering this time around doesn't seem to be... Like, he acknowledges that he's entering the race really late. And that may prevent him from getting really anything done in the debate at all. Like, in any of the forms of the Green Party stuff at all. So anyways, now that that's out of the way, let's move on to the main topic of this video. The 2020 Constitution Party candidates. This one is interesting, because the Constitution Party is a party that is really not talked about a lot. Not in third-party circles, not in a lot of circles. But the Constitution Party primary is still probably going to be interesting in a sense. But it might be obvious who's going to win. But anyways, first of all, for those who don't know what the Constitution Party is, it's a right-wing to far-right paleo-conservative political party. Paleo-conservative, what does that mean? Is it different from a conservative in the Republican Party? Yes. You might actually see that you might have more agreement with a paleocon than a neocon. Paleocons are noticeably further to the right on, like, a lot of social issues. They're, like, super anti-gay, super right-wing on, like, a lot of social issues, to the point where some of them are even segregationists. Yes, some of them are literally segregationists. But, I mean, they're also different on a lot of other issues. Like, some of them might be further right on marijuana, but some of them might take a more libertarian stance on marijuana. I mean, one of them is, like, I mean, the thing is, they have, like, a mixed bag on ideologies. They're also, like, one thing that is notable is that they're actually anti-free trade. Like, they're against NAFTA and TPP and such. Because, the globalists. I did an Alex Jones impression because Alex Jones himself is a well-known paleoconservative. And, as such, these guys are going to be... The Constitution Party has kind of been the somewhat default position for paleocons, even though, Republicans are usually the default position of paleocons, but these are for the paleocons that actually have somewhat of a principle in their ideology. I said somewhat, not a lot. But anyways... Here are the here are the Constitution Party candidates for president. First, I'll go over the one that I'm pretty sure I already covered. Sam Tittle. Sam Tittle is a female candidate who has been running for president since 2012 under her own platform of, like, We the People. Like, We the People is her party line. She is running, and, I think it's pretty obvious that she might not be the biggest name in the field, but she's a bigger name than a couple of these other guys. The next candidate is Colt Hample. Colt Hample is he's not a big name. Like, he's a guy with a Facebook page. That's pretty much his thing. Like, that's pretty much who he is in regards to all this. The next candidate is Rachel Davis. Rachel Davis. She's also a person with a Facebook page, but it seems she's being a bit more active. She's even going so far as to say Rachel Davis for president 2020 and 2024. Yeah, I don't think she's going to be making that much of a scene in the, this stuff, but, she could also, she could be, a factor. The next candidate is Charles Kraut. Now, Charles Kraut has an actual website, and that's a step up. He's got your average paleoconservative platform, but one thing that makes him unique is that he is the only other Constitution Party candidate that is on the ballot in my home state of North Carolina. North Carolina recently revealed who's on their presidential ballots, and Green Party's been lackluster. The Libertarian one has been not lackluster, actually. They have 16 names on the ballot, and the Constitution Party only has him and one other candidate. But we'll get to that in a second. Yeah, Kraut, I think, will be making somewhat of a splash in this election, but not by much. The next candidate is the first person to announce that he was running for the Constitution Party presidential nomination, Don J. Grudman. Now, Don J. Grudman is a very interesting figure. Let me explain. Don J. Grudman is a guy who has run for the Constitution Party nomination for president before, but has also made some... He's a perennial candidate who has run for office a grand total of 20 times. Now, one of which is actually for California District 15. And it's not even as a Constitution Party candidate. He's run as a Constitution Party candidate, as an American Independent Party candidate, and an independent. Okay. He's done that because the AIP used to have this thing where they were the California affiliate of the Constitution Party, but then they split off to form another party, which would be the Constitution Party affiliate for California. And Grudman has kind of been just jumping between party to party because, there really isn't a 100% clear-cut thing, especially considering there's some other factors with the Constitution Party that I'll briefly mention again in a bit. But Grudman, he has gotten notoriety for two things that he said. Okay, so the first thing that he said was when he was running for Senate of California in 2018. You see, when you're running for Senate in California, you're given a blurb to pretty much say something with your platform. This is what he chose to say on his blurb.
There is no such thing as transgender. It does not exist. What does exist are broken people who pretend to be the opposite sex and even mutilate themselves in the attempt. Now, in our constitutional republic, we are free to be psychotic as long as we don't hurt ourselves or others. But we have no right to teach children that this mental, emotional, and spiritual pathology is normal, natural, or healthy in the slightest way possible. To do so is an attack upon children and a form of child molestation. So-called transgender children are being used as weapons to attack and destroy normal, healthy children. This must be stopped. Please join me, Don J. Grundman, U.S. Senate candidate of the Constitution Party, in calling for a national ban on the transgender mutilation of children.
Yeah. That is Don J. Grundman explaining like his platform for Senate in California. California, remember, the state that is supposedly filled with all the lefty pothead people. Like, this is the state that he chooses to run for Senate in. Hint, Don, if you want to win, try Alabama. But anyways, here's the second thing that he said that was interesting. This was when he was in charge of the Straight Pride Parade in California. Yeah, he's one of those guys as well. So here's what he ended up saying when he was trying to describe the Straight Pride group.
We say we're there to defend all races and colors. You pulled out Caucasian. You didn't have any ramifications after which we put in our manifesto per se. You attacked us as racism. You pulled the race card to pull in attacks against us, to justify attacks against us in that park. And when they come, you're going to turn right around and say, well, we deserved it. We haven't done anything. We're a totally peaceful racist group.
To be fair, he probably was tongue-tied, but I mean, when you're trying to say that your group isn't racist, and then you say we're a totally peaceful racist group, doesn't matter if it was a Freudian slip. I mean, if it was a Freudian slip, that would mean that it is true that it's a racist group. Although one thing that's weird is, what does race have to do with the Straight Pride Coalition? Is that a thing? Are straight people racist all of a sudden? Straight people in the chat, let me know. Are you guys racist or not? So anyways, and we have reached the last candidate, and probably the biggest candidate of the group, Don Blankenship. Now, Don Blankenship is notable for running for Senator of West Virginia in 2018. He ran in the Republican primary and then tried to continue his run under the Constitution Party nomination. It didn't end up panning out, but he did make himself a known figure within the Constitution Party within the Constitution Party, and he was able to garner enough support that Constitution Party immediately started saying, bro, you should run for president. And Blankenship was pretty much like, yeah, sure. But he didn't formally make it official until this year. The thing is, Don Blankenship, his coal mine literally killed people. People kind of forget that, but it's true. Now, I mean, okay, I've stated how this has gone, but how will the primary go? Like, I've stated the candidates. How will the primary go? Well, much like the Green Party nomination, I think it's pretty obvious who's going to be the nominee. I'm willing to say it's more than likely going to be Blankenship, because Blankenship has been notable across the country. Like, remember, his campaign was notable in the 2018 election. Like, people knew who Blankenship was, and he was a national figure before then, and he was a national figure after that. And that kind of press will be good for the Constitution Party candidate. I mean, I keep saying Constitution Party candidate when I just keep trying to say the Constitution Party. That will end up doing well for the Constitution Party. And, I mean, I stated before, the previous, like, in 2012, they did this before. They tried to get a big name to run for the Constitution Party nomination, trying to get Roy Moore and trying to get, and they inevitably got Virgil Good to run for the Constitution Party nomination, and he won. But I mean, the thing about the Constitution Party and other small paleocon parties is that technically the primary is worthless. Because the primary is held in like 3 states, or 2. And I mean, like in the 2016 election, the Constitution Party held primaries in 2 states. 1 state was unresolved, but then the Constitution Party just nominates someone at the convention, which is inevitably where it's going to be. So even there is a possibility that Don J. Grundmann ends up getting a decent amount in the primary, it inevitably does not matter, because Blankenship will probably just get the nomination at the convention. Especially considering one of the two states that held the Constitution Party convention before is actually going to be running its own candidate, because, for those of you who don't know, there's a previous episode where I kind of explained this, but the Constitution Party has been having trouble. Like, the National Constitution Party has been having some issues, and many state affiliates have actually left the party and are running candidates of their own. So, some people like Blankenship and Kraut are actually also running for the Constitution Party nominations of the Idaho Party, as well as the National Party. So that will be a bit interesting. They're also simultaneously running for the AIP nomination and other small Paleocom parties. So yeah, inevitably I think Blankenship will end up walking out with a nomination, and maybe Grundmann will end up getting like the VP slot. It's possible. So anyways, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website or follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Quora, or check out my articles on the Independent Political Report.